Uh, I think it was after the third day that we got some food. As I was telling you, uh, for the first 3 days, I was just left ignored, and probably there were reasons for it. The reasons could be that the war was intense, and we were, I didn't know that we were in Rawalpindi at that time. But as you know, Rawalpindi means Chaklala Air Base, and Chaklala is an important air base. So we were definitely striking that air base. I think you've gone off the screen.
Yeah.
Am I still? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So those were the days when relentless attacks by India over Chaklala was going on. So I suppose not getting food may not be deliberate, but 3 PNS was being supported by Chaklala. So Chaklala Air Force Station, I suppose, could not support 3 PNSU, and they were probably left entirely to their own devices. Sergeant Rao, you have gone off the air, have you?
Yeah, yes, I am, sir. I am on the air. Yes, sir.
So, yes. So, when we got food on the fourth day, my God, it was just one chapati and a little dal. And we used to have to peel it off in layers in order to, pretend that you're eating something. And of course, you're also perpetually scared that you shouldn't. There was nothing in my stomach in any case, but whatever you eat has to come out. And that was the worry, because they would not come and take you to the toilet on time. So, sometimes you have to pee in your own room. So you have to urinate in your own room, then it dries up and it smells. And then we learned the trick. After you learn very quickly when you're in enemy hands, how to react. So it became a ritual to, you see, you don't know date and time. So you're scratching on the wall, and the room is, as I told you, 4 paces by 6 paces, very tall ceiling, one light, which is always off. And it had one iron door, one wooden door, and chicks. So it's pitch black inside. You're actually in solitary confinement. So that is why on the 5th day, I asked one of the visiting men. By the way, we were, again, no officers. There was a warrant officer, Rezvi, a pretty nice fellow. He got to like us a lot because of our morale, and we were very determined, but he still was the enemy. There's no doubt about that. So anyway, so I think in his own inimical way, he realized that we were being neglected, and this is really not what the Geneva Convention should be. And I am saying this because I think that we appealed to his seniority, and we said, okay, if there is no officer here, there is a POW officer, Squadron Leader Osman, but he is nowhere to be seen. He said, sir, you will see him because you have to see him. And what he meant was that the interrogation will start. So it was, so yes, and right and truly it started, and all the interrogations were well past midnight. They generally at 2 or 3 in the morning. So there was a reason for it. One was they won't let you sleep. Secondly, any question that is not properly answered, the interrogation would be stopped, and the person would leave, and then you're out in a compound. In a compound, you're there bare feet, unarmed, and a soldier with a loaded rifle is standing there. And he can just shoot you and say he tried to escape. Nobody can question him. So that was the psychological aspect, was more the fear than the physical aspect. Because I think he was standing no more than 4 feet away from me. A bullet from 4 feet will put an end to you even before you can think. So it would have been a painless death. But surviving was the painful thing, standing in the cold, because bare feet, when you stand at attention, within half an hour to 40 minutes, you're completely numbed right up to the knees, and you can't feel your feet. You can't feel, and you can't move. So that was very tough. And fortunately, being ex-NDA, and I think anybody who served with me will know that my day used to start at 4 o'clock with a 6 to 7 kilometer jog with a cold water shower early morning in Halwara in the minus or zero temperatures. So I was extremely fit, and that's really what saved my life, because surviving in those conditions without food, without clothing, without warm clothing, without adequate clothing to keep yourself warm, those are very, very tough. You can, you just try it and you see how difficult it is. So yes, then life continued like that. On the 5th day, it's a very interesting thing happened. Again, not so late, but at about 10 o'clock at night, I was taken to the same interrogation room, and I saw a very fair white man sitting there. And he was in civilian clothes, but he seemed to be very polite, and he said, "Flying Officer Kuruvilla, please sit down." And then I sat down and he asked me, he said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "I am Brigadier General Chuck Yeager." So I met the legend himself. Brigadier General Chuck Yeager, unfortunately, was doing the wrong things. He was neither the defense attaché, he was not a legal representative of America, but he was, as I later learned when I did some research to find out who he was, he was actually the military advisor to some of the wealthy American arms companies, notably companies like Boeing, and there's one more, and he was with that company actually. What is it? I'm forgetting the name. It'll come to me in a minute. And he should not have been in Pakistan. He had no business to be interviewing us. We didn't know. Anyway, then when he said Chuck Yeager, I remembered immediately that he was the very famous brigadier general who, as a young captain, or a major, sorry, as a young major, he crossed the sound barrier. He broke the sound barrier. And he wrote a book called The Right Stuff by Brigadier General Chuck Yeager. So that was him. So he said, "I'm Brigadier General Chuck Yeager." So I asked him, what are you doing here, sir? So, it came as a very involuntary question, light-hearted. I realized that, I'm talking to somebody who's an alien and an American. So it just sort of came out of my mouth. And he said, "Well, I'm just meeting all the Indian pilots." But I knew it was more than that, because the questions that he asked me were primarily about the ejection seat. I had ejected at high speed, around 1,000 kilometers per hour at low level, 100 meters. And he was quite surprised that most of the Russian low-level ejection were all successful. So he asked me about the CAFO seat. I said it's a rocket assisted seat, and I'm very new. I don't know any of the details. So I didn't tell him anything. I just told him that it's a highly integrated ejection seat. Of course, I knew that it has something like 150 mechanical operations, which all operate within 2.5 seconds. That's the amazing thing about the Russian CAFO seat. And of course, none of this was to be mentioned to him, but he was very polite. He didn't press for anything. Neither he said, "Well, you're very lucky to have got away with minor injuries, a swollen ankle, limping, and a little, unable to move my neck very much." So he said, "You're very, very lucky. Well," says, "you can go now." And that's all. He basically wanted me to meet him and find out, how I ejected. I just told him I had ejected at low level. Perhaps that's what he wanted to hear. But as in later life, we lost a lot of respect for him, because he was really an arms dealer. That's all he was at the end of the day. And he should not have been in Pakistan helping the Pakistanis to find out, things, and virtually, as somebody called him, a pimp for these American arms dealers. So that's really sad for him to get such a name after being an excellent test pilot and having broken the sound barrier. So that was the 5th day. And similarly, on the same day, actually in the morning, I must tell you this, there was another visit, and that was a Frenchman called Mr. Bablon. And Mr. Bablon was from the International Committee of the Red Cross. A day earlier, I had written, no, sorry, I beg your pardon. Mr. Bablon visited much later. The 5th day in the morning, there was another gentleman who visited, and I had asked him, I had told him that we are being solitarily confined, no food, no warm clothing, and that I should be given a piece of paper and a pen to write a complaint. I would like to write to the International Committee. Yes. So that was all on the 5th day. And that was duly, accepted. And graciously, I got a paper the following morning, and I wrote this application stating that I'm being solitarily confined with very little food, and we don't even know what we're eating, harassment for going to toilets and all that. And I must say that on the 15th day, till then, life went on as usual. On the 15th day, we were suddenly dressed up, and that was when Mr. Bablon walked in to my cell. He had my application with him, and he said, yes, your application was given to me. I have taken note of it. Now here you must understand how he got this. I didn't expect him to visit, nor did I expect him to have my application. But as he walked in, when he said, I have your application, and he showed it to me, and he said, has anything improved? I said, no. And he said, well, things will change a lot because they cannot treat you badly anymore. I think you should know that we have, your country has 93,000 Pakistani prisoners, and they are all having a good time across the border. And that was complete news to me, and it emboldened me. I realized that we had won the war. That was great news. And internally, I was overjoyed, and I thanked Mr. Bablon for bringing my application and for suggesting that we will be looked after. And very next day, that was from the 7th day, we got the uniform of the PAF airmen and the warm clothing, and that was given to us, and very nice clothing. And here I must tell you that the PAF officers who never come out, who never associate themselves with their men, used to all stay in 5-star hotels. Many months later, when they started visiting us, they would come either in the typical dress and say, "Ye kafir hai, salam maro isko," or those of them who trained with us abroad and who knew some of the POWs would come with some cakes, but everyone was staying in some 5-star hotel. Their salaries were very high. Men had very nice clothing, which we wore, and I know that was good material. That's what I mean. And, we were not in the same shape, but we are very differently trained, very able mentally, and we have a lot of love for our country, which I found is there over there, but it's all for a cause. It's the kind of money and the wealth that they were accumulating for themselves. Everybody would be talking about land or something which they are illegitimately acquiring, which is now all out in the open. In PF, everybody, or in the army, everyone is just looting that country. So we saw the beginnings of that very much in 71. And it taught me a lot, how much more that I should respect my country and love it for all that I get. Never mind how little it is. But the caring, the camaraderie amongst our men, I can never forget that our airmen would always, at every rumpach, they would either make me dance or shove me around and make them laugh. And I had great rapport with them because I used to play games with them. And it was always very solid relationship with our men. None of that was seen across the border. And I can tell you very much, even till today, believe me, if they ever fight with us, they'll always lose the war because they just do not have that leadership or that rapport with their men as teamwork. And every war in the army-led wars, you will notice that it's all led by officers. And most of them lay down their life. And the men get very upset and they fight on, and you know what the rest of the story is. So there's nothing much to be said on that. Anyway, after Mr. Babylon left, on the 25th of December, suddenly we were dressed up all over again. And all the lights and all came on in the room. And about 9 o'clock in the morning, we were pulled out and taken to a common room near the interrogation room. That was a big room. And there I was one of the last to read because I was a flying officer, the junior most. So naturally, I was the last to be led into that room. And there I saw 11 other pilots. It was a great joy, and everybody, shouted on top of their voice when I walked in, Flying Officer Kuruvilla being introduced by Squadron Leader Osman. And by then we met the Camp Commandant, Squadron Leader Osman, a real intellectual. We had a lot of respect for him because he treated us well. He understood the game. He went by the Geneva Conventions. And after 4 months, he went away. And it was not a surprise to any of us. He went away as the staff officer and air advisor to the Pakistan Air Chief. And from him, Squadron Leader Wahiduddin took over. So on this day, 25th Christmas Day, about 14 days after I ejected, 14 days of solitary confinement, we suddenly met 11 other pilots. It was a day of great joy.